Zero Trust Forum users panel. Thank everybody very much for coming today. I'd like to start this off with really a conversation around how we see zero trust for users as it stands today. Now, we have a whole lot of moving parts when we think about securing users, but there's many different ways we can possibly solve this problem. And I'd like to get a bit of feeling from the panel here on how we solve zero trust for users as it stands currently 2021 right now in this sort of environment we find ourselves in. And I'll start off with Ajay.
So what's happening in 2021, the future of the work is changing very dramatically. What it does, the more remote workforce, that's one thing has happened. The second, what we're noticing that communication has shifted from email to collaboration. And also people are using multi-cloud environment. Like right now we're on Zoom, Slack, Teams, email. Email is not the only primary communication. Now we're communicating in multiple channels. And also these collaboration channels are going to become future of the OS. So from user perspective, they just want to be productive and they want to get their work done. So we need to think about how to give them what they want, but at the same time give what the businesses need from security compliance, as well as the complete, basically go granular as much as lateral. So the attacks surface is moving laterally. We have to really think about how to give a zero trust, not just zero trust inbox, but zero trust collaboration and extending to managed service vendors. And then keeping the user, the end user, and then as a center of it.
So yeah, keeping the user at the center of it. Heath, I know that you've got an interesting perspective on this space. What's your thoughts on how we secure users today?
Yeah, so I mean, my thoughts on how we secure users today is that we take advantage of modern technology, right? And we look, the bigs of Apple and Google have done an amazing job of allowing us to simplify the authentication of ourselves to our mobile devices. And, it's a device we carry every day, everywhere we go. We've taken the approach of let's turn that into a software-based token, look at other ways to provide, up to 5 factors to authenticate someone in a remote environment, and doing that in a passwordless way so that the user experience really is as simple as looking at your iPhone or using your fingerprint, et cetera, and then using that software-based token for access either on the mobile device or cross-screen to laptop, desktop, TV, et cetera. As that cross-collaboration experience goes, you just need to be able to be anywhere and on any device. And so, we look at it as a way to allow for a high level of IAL assurance that then brings a high level of AAL assurance once the person's onboarded to that software-based token.
Okay, Barry, your thoughts?
Yeah, one of the struggles with users is how do you maintain security and performance? Often we put so much different security tools in place that the user experience goes, sideways. And users are trying to do a lot. They're trying to go get remote access to self-hosted applications, cloud access to SaaS applications, just direct internet access. We've put a whole bunch of different point products in front of them. How can we get that onto one seamless platform where we apply the same zero trust security policy? We verify their identity, their device posture. We then filter, inspect, and even isolate. A lot of times, zero trust, we think about only allowing people to go into certain applications, but let's extend those zero trust principles to the entire internet when you're browsing it. We can't trust that even a good website won't potentially have malicious content that can exploit a browser vulnerability. So really making it easy for the user on a device they own, unmanaged device, to be able to get access to all those different applications or resources on the internet wherever it lives.
So that takes me to a follow-on point there, and JP, I want to get your thoughts on this, is really with the reality that the users are constantly traversing a threat space and we're always in a sort of combat environment. How can we adapt what we have and leverage the internet itself to really make them more secure? And is that something that is key to zero trust, or is that something that is sort of a tangential capability in your opinion?
Yeah, so I think the internet is now the the vehicle to access pretty much everything. So whether you're trying to access content that's on the web or you're trying to access private applications, everyone is now remote in 2021 due to COVID. And once that occurred, we basically have increased the attack surface. I mean, picture working from home and your kids might be in the other room downloading things or playing video games, and then their machines get infected, and then that infection spreads within kind of your home network. And then if your home network is using the internet to connect to the corporate network, you've increased the attack surface there. So I think isolation is a key thing. We need to start thinking about isolating users from malicious content on the web, as well as isolating applications and resources on the private network that users should not have access to, and then shrinking that attack surface, because just connecting the internet to your corporate office and having full access is not a good idea.
Okay, and Joey, your thoughts?
Yeah, I think with users in the internet, using the signals. So for me, that's the first thought. If a user is accessing your resources, using that as part of the machine learning signal to build a profile, this is something that can be done, and leveraging more on it being one of the signals for your typical user. So your typical user comes from specific locations, but instead of looking at it from a what they can do on the internet, it's what are they doing to your enterprise on the internet, right? So that goes from not only understanding what entry point, what typical applications they access, and how to actually take more granular controls within the authentication session, where you could force users to step up authentication depending on their action. Because at the end of the day, we want to provide more usability, but we also don't want to sacrifice our security. So I definitely see how we could look at the internet as another signal point, so that way we could leverage and understand if this is a malicious actor, insider threat, or a bad actor doing harm to your enterprise.
So we have a lot of points coming in here in conversation really around how this has got to be easy, how we got to use a lot of telemetry, but where do we go as we continue to progress to make this where the users don't even necessarily know that they're operating in a secure environment? Because after all, at the end of the day, that's what we're trying to get to, is where security is just part of the user experience. And Ajay, I know that you guys are doing some interesting work in this space. How do you solve this problem for folks and make it where security is just built into the fabric of the internet?
So from our perspective, the way the user are accessing the application these days is it all cloud-based. So you got the O365, G Suite, Slack, Teams, Box, Dropbox, and it's no longer a SNMT, TP, or port 25 way solving this. What you have to do, you have to be able to easily deploy. You have to understand the user context, the rhythm, the rhymes, the how they communicate, their and whom they communicate, and then you have to monitor not at just at the MFA level, but always at any given time where they're coming from. Is someone impersonating? What are they clicking on? And where they're taking? You have to basically take the security which used to be in email or at the inside the firewall. Now you have to look at a user desktop, and you have to assume that how that user is going to make mistake, and how do you teach him, protect him, as well as monitor to make sure that is the same user from context perspective. So, and you have to do it in all the collaboration channels.
Yeah, right. So, I mean, more collaboration means more avenues of compromise, potentially. Barry, what are your thoughts on how we make this part of just the user experience?
Yeah, well, you really have to make sure that it's imperceptible that there's anything between them and wherever they're trying to go on the internet. So we have to if you're providing an edge network to provide this cloud service, we have to get that in less than a blink of a second. We're within 100 milliseconds over 200 points of presence. We make sure that every one of our security services runs on every data center, every server within that data center. And then you have to make sure that if they do have to deploy something on their endpoint, doesn't drain their battery life, doesn't slow down the device. Our existing VPN clients using IPsec or SSL protocols are inefficient. So we've designed around an open source protocol called WireGuard, which is mobile friendly. And then if you want to actually really mitigate all threats, known or unknown, by doing remote browser isolation, today you've had two choices. You either send back a pixel stream which is a lot of bandwidth and really slows down the user experience, or you manipulate the DOM, you basically scrub the page and you break a lot, and the user gets, you get a lot of IT complaints saying, I can't go to my e-commerce site. So the way we've solved this is innovative technology where we use a headless Chromium browser out in our 200 different data center locations that sends back a replica of the drawing commands to any modern browser. So you don't have to change your browser, and that's important for the end user to feel like I'm using the internet just like I always did. My battery life isn't getting drained. I'm not seeing any latency and no breakage in interactive websites, Google Drive, Office 365, and all along you're providing all the same security as when they were in the office going through the full security stack.
Interesting. Okay. Well, so if that's a pretty key capability, I guess, Heath, one question I'd throw your way is, where do you see us going in the next, say, 18 to 36 months?
So I think there's some interesting, collaboration's been mentioned a lot in things coming together. And I think that there's a lot of different aspects of all the representation on this panel and how we're solving for this problem. And I think that, we specifically focus on the human to machine authentication level. A lot of people, else on this panel are working on how do you make sure that it is them once they're interacting within that environment. I think there's going to need to be some, collaboration within all of these solutions to find out how we best serve the end user and ultimately the companies, right? And so there's been a discussion around making the security transparent for the user. We fully believe in that especially like when it comes to multi-factor authentication, it should be native to the technology and not a separate module. Right now, from the administrative side, managing credentials, username and passwords, and then pairing those with individual MFA tokens, whether it's a hardware key or a software token, et cetera, is really cumbersome, and it creates a tremendous amount of friction, not only for the user doing the step-up authentication, et cetera, but from the administrative side, and is a big cost center burden, right? It drives help desk tickets for password resets, especially when they're paired with one-time passcodes, et cetera. So we believe that, transparency, with today's technology, security should be inherent in the technology. MFA should be, is a must-have, and it should be part of the technology. And I think it works in a symbiotic relationship with everything else that's being discussed today. And I think that that's where it needs to get, especially with this, post-pandemic. We're going to go back to the office in some fashion at some point, because collaboration really happens and there's an energy that happens there, but it'll never be the same that it was before. Too many of us have discovered that not commuting is awesome. And so, I think that that's a reason to stay there. But at the same point, you posted today another substantial ransomware attack, and we've got to figure out how to alleviate that pain point. And it's only going to get worse if we allowed it to not change.
Yeah, we've got to, the time for change is kind of now. So going forward with that, as we're sort of wrapping up a little bit of the panel here, JP, your thoughts on what does the future look like for folks, and how do we make this user engagement in the space become something where it is DT all the time everywhere that they go?
Yeah, one of the things that I often talk to customers about is when you're making it so that it's completely transparent for the user literally should just boot up their computer and everything securely connects. If you can eliminate, typing in passwords, that's a good thing. Every system you go to has a password, and users tend to forget their password. So if you can solve some of those problems, I think it makes it more seamless for the user. Performance, Barry mentioned performance. If you're connecting a user to a security solution and then there's a performance degradation, the user's not going to use it. They're going to circumvent whatever tool sets you put in place. So performance is very, very key. And on the vendor side, having points of presence as close as possible to your users, like Barry mentioned, is very, very key. But I'll also say that just like we're trying to make things kind of seamless for the end user, we also need to make things seamless for the security administrator. And that really comes down to policy. So one of the things that we do is remote browser isolation. Some of the solutions in the market, you can set up certain categories of websites that you want to put in remote browser isolation. Maybe it's pornography sites or gambling sites. But just doing that alone isn't necessarily enough, because there might be some malicious content that's showing up in a different category. So you have this situation of, do I do isolation based on categories, or do I isolation for everything? And if you do isolation on everything, does that introduce some sort of end user performance issues or usability issues? And one of the things that we're focusing on right now is what I'm calling intelligent remote browser isolation, where the system, through automation and machine learning and AI, starts to assign risk scores on websites dynamically and let the system actually create the policy for the security administrator versus the administrator statically doing that. On the other side, so that's the internet side of things in automation, but also on the private access side, the zero trust network access side of things, how do you get those policies set properly, saying that this user is allowed access to this application and only this application? What I've found is that a lot of solutions in the market are basically putting things in groups. So if I say the sales group has access to this application, that might be too much access, because you might have the VP of sales in that group and the inside salesperson in that group, and they don't necessarily need to have the same policy. So how do you get policy down to the individual user, like every single individual user? And if you're an organization of 10,000 users, number one, the security administrator has no idea what the policy should be for every single user. And even if he or she did, that administrator would have to get on the keyboard and configure all those policies. So through behavioral analytics, machine learning, and things like that, and automation, I think you can create policies on both sides, whether it's trying to secure access to the internet or secure access to private networks.
Yeah, policy is going to continue to be a very key thing that we've got to solve going forward. So, Joey, last shot over the bow here. Where do you think that we're going to be going, and how do you think you're solving this problem in the future for users in the context of enabling zero trust?
Yeah, I think in the future, we're going to start seeing more enablement for our users. For the longest, it's IT who's defending their identities. I think in the future, we're going to start seeing more tools like My Sign-ins, where you can see where you have anomalous activity happening to your account. We're going to start seeing more information bubbled up to the end user to educate our end users. Because if you look at the most of the attack vectors, or some of the attack vectors, you actually see that end user education is the remediation, or a way to prevent those issues, right? So I think in the future, we're going to start seeing how we can make our end users love their experience, whether that be seamless single sign-on for their application, a one-stop shop where they can customize their dashboard with My Sign-ins, but even getting strong authentication from the get-go. So unlocking their device by just simply showing their face with biometrics, but being able to give them the exact tools to help defend themselves. So almost giving them a shield to protect their own identities by giving them more tools that they will need to be able to defend their identities.
That's great. So yeah, we've covered a lot of topics here in a short amount of time. We talked about no passwords. We talked about biometrics. We talked about remote browser isolation, ease of use, the evolution that's coming. Amazing stuff. Thank you guys very much for participating on the panel and in the forum. Zero Trust Forum, user panel. Check it out. Looking forward to seeing all the demos.
All right. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Chad.
Thanks, Jay.
All right,
Thanks,
cool.
everybody.